you are in the conception of the other. Things are not only disclosed within your own subjective perception, but you are yourself an objective phenomena in the conception of the other. For in the other you are an object, as the other is a subject in that object. And so, what implications does the idea that you are in the conception of the other have? What does it mean to be in the conception of the other? First, it may imply that your conception of the world is not the only one, and therefore you are in the conception of the other has consequences in the sense of actually having some kind of interaction with the other. And although this means commonsensical, well, obviously you interact with others and they see you as you see them and vice versa, is not obvious nor self-evident. Why? Why does the other see the world almost identical to how you see the world? Or rather, even if we say, why does the other see a different version of the world than you? Why are you both separate individuals? You see, if there's an objective phenomena, which there is, and that is you are in the conception of the other, is the most objective phenomena. Doesn't matter if you say everything is subjective and everything is disclosed within my own conception. The fact that you are therefore disclosed within that conception itself is the objective phenomena. And therefore you say, well, why is then, if the objective phenomena is that an object is always disclosed within a subject, or that an object characterizes the subject is the explanation of the object itself, it is its form, why are there differences in observers conceiving each other in the same way? Psychologically, it has the significance of the other having a certain opinion over you, or sees you in a certain way, sees you how you are exhibited, or therefore exhibit yourself. And this opinion of you makes them self-assimilate their own role or a version of themselves that either dislike or like onto you. And if the other is truly a version of yourself in a different potential parallel state, then you have to ask, why did that self take on that characterization? You see? Because it's clearly not you if you are at this particular moment, and therefore not them. But if they are a version of you, then well, that version of you is an implicit potentiality which is not yet actualized, either for the good or the better. Thank God you're not homeless, but too bad you're not a billionaire, whatever. If assuming a good life is measured by money, which it's not completely. It is to some degree, but not completely. Money is ultimately just a quantitative measure of value, of quality. How do you quantitatively measure quality? And therefore, the greater amount of quantity equates to the maximum amount of quality, right? But that's obviously not the case, because if you have a maximum amount of qualities or differences of things, and the quantitative number ultimately measures each individual variable as separate from the other, innumerably, or within a relatively large scale number compared to other numbers, if it does that, then that doesn't equate to the most qualitative single thing, Like just because there's a million of knives, that can't determine the best one out of all of them. Like which one is the sharpest and nicest knife of them all. The fact that there's a billion of them doesn't answer that question. And therefore, well, which one is the best knife? And in fact, answering that question takes on the very inverse and opposite determination of measuring quality by the maximum amount of quantity. Because the more quantity you have, the more things you have, the less you are capable of determining their quality. The more knives you have, the harder it is to find the best one, let's say. Unless they're all the best. Or all the worst, in case you can't find the best one, or you can always find the best one. But that can't be the case, because one obviously implies the absence or the existence of the other. So if we say, well, all of them are the best, then there's the absence of any worse. And if all of them are worse, there's the lack of the best. And therefore, the other just exists as the opposite, and therefore opposite of potentiality. And so the transformation from potentiality into actuality is an actual state of change in motion. It is the element of change in motion. You know, how a thing generates into being. But not as an observable growth of some organism or organic or inorganic entity, but rather as the actual occurrences of events that these objects are a substrate of and are enduring. There has to be a substrate that characterizes or takes on the character of the event. Otherwise, the event is just a mere thought, and that's what it is in a potential state. It is all your thoughts. Oh, they're just thoughts. They're just in your head. That's what the elites use to downplay the power you have of your mind. For the power of your mind is the true essence of power in the universe. You see, you can determine the universe with your mind, but you're too weak. You're incapable of. Some could, and therefore you see them in the position that they're in. Either they're powerful or evil or good or famous, or, you know, everybody's determining their version of reality. You get to see the good ones because they're being displayed, and you get to see the bad ones because you come in contact with them during everyday experience. But what we just said contradicted our initial premise, which is that you are in the conception of the other. And if you are in the conception of the other, then you are to some degree determined by them. And that's the thing, you are determined by them. You are determined by others, whether you like it or not, and you determine others. But you are determined by others by being a variable in their conception. And you play on the role that they observe you as. But they observe you so finitely and within a certain strength of frequency that they cannot completely determine you exactly as they perceive in their thought. They can only determine you within an estimated and ambiguous measure. For one thing, when you're walking down the street by people, you observe them for a slight second. And you have, for that slight second, determined a role in your head of what they are. And that role is the actual construct of your particular and self-evident moment right now. You see? You observe this most immediate state when you are high. You see, when you're on some kind of drugs or psychedelics or specific, well, psychedelics develop a convolution of a construct. It starts molding in less defined and further away possibilities of reality and muddle it in within your own immediate and self-evident reality. And therefore you still have the basis of your own reality, like the, you know, like the template of a website. But on top of that, develops a scope of other forms of unconscious thoughts happening in the mind that you are not necessarily aware of, otherwise you'd be conscious of them. But they are there. And they are, as Jung says, the shadow. Which is just a cool, you know, a romanticization of, and an analogy, a very good analogy, a deep analogy. Does not downplay the deep analogy of the shadow. Because it is in your shadow where lies the potential for you to be negative and bad. But it is also in your shadow, which Jung did not equally outline, is the potential for you to be good and great. Is because the shadow is the template, it is the platform, it is the substrate in which the idea molds its immediate and present existence into. And you are at different moments, at different times, different people, while being the same self-awareness of what you think you are at all times. You see? There's something static in you, but everything around you is constantly changing and happening to you. Right now I just ran and I hurt my leg, and I'm walking in a gloomy day. Wind is beautiful, it's pretty hot. My leg is in extreme pain because I was running and I have barefoot flat shoes, and I stepped on a rock and it went right into my heel. Oh, that hurts like a bitch. So I am like a injured animal, you know, like a gazelle injured in the animal kingdom or whatever. Let's see. And I am walking to do some arbitrary goal for the assumption of producing a greater general outcome. But I don't know whether what I'm doing right now was actually a product of my own doing, or whether it was a product of the conception of somebody else's doing. You see, who determined me to be in this state walking towards doing this, and I in the meantime got injured? And it is ultimately your own environment. Your own environment, specifically the people that you hate and you know. Haven't you realized the people that you know are the most people that you hate? You know, but of course you love them, right? Because they're your family. And listen, and you don't have to hate them. You could love them. Your environment could be pleasant to you. You could have produced an environment where your peers are like you instead of dislike you. But a lot of people are in environments where people genuinely dislike them. They're disliked by every person they know, and they dislike every person that they know. And you have to wonder why. Why am I the outcome of the sum of my total relations? Why am I the outcome of these some set of relations? Why? It's because they are different characterizations of you looking at you, and you see them, and you see that part of you, and you develop a problem with it. And you're like, I don't like that fucking part of me. And I know that's not what I identify with. And that develops a persona. And a persona develops from an antithetical resistance against a perceived persona. You see a particular human, and your personality develops as the antithetical version of that, as the one opposed to it, of the one that it is not that. And you try to develop as furthest away as you can from the personality you disassociate with. And it doesn't have to be bad, you see. You could be suffering at the moment, or you could be not suffering, you could be happy. You see, the things around you are things happening outside of your control, but you control how you feel about them. Not always. Because somebody comes slaps you on the head, you can't help but feel offended and angry. And wow, time is beautiful. Because in and of itself, it's unperceivable. You can't see it. So it has to be applied to a concept. And you see time in that concept. And once you recognize time in the object, then you see the character that it has been through. You see what it has endured. You see what it has become. It has become this, don't you see? You're just witnessing an abstraction of a moment in its becoming. And makes you think of what it is that you did not observe, not what it is that you observed. It makes you think of how long have I been dead, not how long have I been alive. And how many times have I relived this moment for infinity? Because you cannot grasp the depth of experience of that phenomena until you are confronted with death. And therefore you see truly your life. For you are always physically dying, but you are always mentally alive. And it is your mind that stays on beyond the degeneration of the characterization of it. Your body has passed and is passing, and your mind endures and has to let that go and reconstruct an entirely new set of existence of reality, and has to regrow to accommodate that again, regrow to operate within it. It has to adapt to its newly acquired environment. And therefore it evolves into back to the same moment where it is at home with itself. As Hegel says, it is at home with itself. It has, for 1 second, found truly what it is. And how long could it keep doing that? How long can it extend that state?